Hello and welcome to this recorded version of our NCFE Provider CPD session, Preparing for Maths Functional Skills Delivery. My name is Charmaine Phelps and I'm a Provider Development Officer for Functional Skills, specialising in maths. It's my role to support centres through the planning, onboarding and CPD process for NCFE qualifications, focusing specifically on maths. Just a little about my background. I originally trained as a maths teacher and worked for 2 years in a mainstream secondary school. I then ran a business with around 20 facilitators teaching all aspects of the curriculum creatively, including maths, and delivered teacher insets. And I've been with NCFE for 6 years now. In the live session, I was joined by Georgina, who is one of our content solutions developers who created and was behind the resources that we'll be sharing with you. And we will hear direct from Georgina with an extract from the live session later, and also from Joanne Bateman, who works for our skills assessment platform in Skills Builder. And between the two of them, I think we worked out that they've got 32 years in education. Please do, if you have got any questions, I'll give you details at the end as well that you can contact me. And if you would like the slides that accompany this recording and you're viewing this recording from YouTube, then just drop me an email with your centre name and, if possible, your centre number, and I'll be able to send those across to you. The objective of this session is to explore key curriculum requirements, effective teaching strategies, and practical resources to engage learners and promote achievement. We'll have a little look at the subject content, effective planning, schemes of work, individual learning plans or individual skills plans as they're called on our Skills Builder platform, teaching for mastery, and we'll finish with a short summary. Well, we'll start by looking at what you actually have to teach for maths functional skills. The full subject content can be found in the qualification specification in the support materials tab of the qualification pages. You'll notice that currently, as of today and up until October the 17th, we currently have 2 qualification specifications. So there's 2 versions, depending on whether your learners are going to be sitting assessments before or after October the 17th, 2025. The subject content statements do not change between the versions, although there is a slight weighting change in the assessment of number and measure at level 1. So it's the assessment structure that has changed and is the change that you'll see if you compare the 2 qualification specifications side by side. The actual content of what you need to deliver has not changed. This section of the qualification specification provides details of the structure and content of the qualifications. The functional skills subject content is provided by the Department for Education, who stipulate that awarding organisations must create functional skills qualifications that rigidly adhere to this content. The maths subject content can be assessed directly from the Department for Education on the link on this slide, but ultimately the subject content is exactly what you will find in the qualification specification as well. 25% of the marks are allocated to tasks which assess underpinning skills. The subject content states that underpinning skills are defined as the ability to do maths when not as part of a problem. In these assessments, all underpinning skills tasks approach the relevant subject content statement directly and target just one of the 3 subject content areas, the 3 subject content areas being number, shape, space and measure, and handling data. You'll be pleased to know that from October the 17th, 2025, we are stripping away the context from underpinning skills questions, which will make them more accessible to learners, especially those with English as an additional language. The remaining 75% of marks are allocated to items which assess problem solving. The subject content states that these qualifications must assess learners' ability to apply mathematical thinking to solve problems. In the session, rather than taking a look at each of the subject content statements of all of the 5 maths functional skills qualifications, we played a little game. We did a little quiz, and you can join in on this recording as well. So the quiz is simply which level is the subject content statement. So when the quiz starts to play, you'll have, I think, 20 seconds to decide which level the subject content statement is from. So the subject content statement will be at the top, and then the levels to choose from will be below. So the first one, read, write, order and compare common fractions and mixed numbers. Is that statement from entry level 2, entry level 3, level 1 or level 2? You can come up with your own answer. I don't think the Slido will work anymore, but think of what your answer is. This is what our attendees thought on the day. And thankfully that majority were correct. So level 1, they need to read, write, order and compare common fractions and mixed numbers. Next question, read, write and understand thirds, quarters, fifths and tenths, including equivalent forms. Is that from entry 2, entry 3, level 1 or level 2? Think for yourself. Then we'll see what our attendees thought on the day and then reveal the answer. So our attendees, 79% thought it was entry level 3, and they were correct. Next one, read, write, order and compare positive and negative numbers of any size. Is that statement from entry level 2, entry level 3, level 1 or level 2? And for this particular one, the majority thought it was a level 1 statement. And you will notice that all of these questions, there's only 5 questions in total, they are all focusing on number, just to make it a little bit easier. We're just focusing on one of the 3 main topics. But for this particular question, the key is to look at that. It is positive and negative numbers of any size. And that's what tells me it's level 2. So let's see what the next question is, the next subject content statement. Divide 2-digit whole numbers by single-digit whole numbers and express remainders. Is that entry level 2, entry level 3, level 1 or level 2? And the majority thought it was entry level 3. It's actually entry level 2. So it's 2-digit whole numbers by single-digit whole numbers. That's an entry level 2 requirement. I believe this is the final one. Work with simple ratio and direct proportions. Is that from entry level 1, entry level 2, level 1 or level 2? The majority thought level 1. And yes, they're right. It's so ratio and direct proportions are only brought in at level 1. And at level 1, it's just simple ratio and direct proportions that needs to be covered. So well done if you score 5 out of 5 for that quiz. In our session, there was only one person who scored 5 out of 5. Well done to Adrian, forever immortalised in this recording, the only person who scored 5 out of 5. Anybody, think about it yourself. Do you need to make sure that you are aware of the subject content? Although you will be forgiven if you're, sort of using your plans and you're basically looking at, what you're delivering, from week to week. I do not know all of the subject content statements by heart, and I wouldn't expect anybody to, but having a good idea of the progression actually through the levels can be actually quite helpful for you, particularly if you're, for example, teaching at level 2, but you need, your learner's struggling, for example, and you need to, sort of go back a level or two. And it also tells us on there that the hardest question to get right was that one, the one that the knowing that dividing 2-digit whole numbers by single-digit whole numbers and expressing remainders was an entry level 2 requirement. So you can look at the subject content statements for each level covering the 3 strands of maths. Do that in your own time, and so you've got the number, measure, and handling information. And often in preparing for delivery, it is purely the content statements that we aim to deliver. However, what makes functional skills so different to GCSE is the emphasis on applying the mathematical skills. So as much as possible, you need to think about how you are going to build that and embed that into your delivery. When it comes to solving problems and decision making at entry level 1, we can see here what learners are expected to be able to do. You can pause the recording and read it through. At entry level 2, you have the information here as well. And again, you can pause the recording and read it through. And here are the expectations for entry level 3. You can see the similarities and differences and read it through in full in your own time. But here, this is the sort of key part where we've got the differences. At entry level 1, they need to provide a simple explanation for their results in problem solving questions. Entry level 2, it's moving on, they need to present appropriate explanations using numbers, measures, simple diagrams, simple charts and symbols. And then at entry 3, they are presenting results with appropriate and reasoned explanation using numbers, measures, simple diagrams, charts and symbols appropriate to entry level 3. So again, thinking about that progression, we've just had a little think about the progression in terms of the subject content, but thinking then about the progression in your learner's ability to solve problems. This can also help to see them side by side. Learners at level 1 and level 2, the expectations are very similar, so I've sort of merged them onto one slide here. I'll let you read this for yourself. And for this one, analyze and interpret answers in the context of the original problem. This is more in depth for level 1 and level 2 compared to entry levels. And this is why, although we have introduced in the new style papers scaffolding at entry levels for decision-making questions, for example, providing a yes/no tick box, when it says, are they correct, show you're working. This scaffolding is not provided at level 1 and level 2 because we expect our learners at level 1 and level 2 to be able to analyse and interpret answers in the context of the original problem. And the key difference between level 1 and level 2 is that when your learners are coming up with their reasoning to support the process, it is simple at level 1. That's really the only difference between level 1 and level 2 in the specifications at this point. Again, this part of the specification is very easily skimmed over or missed entirely by teachers because we tend to want to get straight in and focus on the individual subject content statements. But it gives the curriculum requirements that come direct from the Department for Education and informs the complexity of the problem-solving questions that learners will face in the assessment. please pause the recording and you can read through. We've got the level 1 expectations here. And I'll click through and show you the level 2. And again, you can pause the recording to read in full. But I'll highlight here where we've got some key differences between level 1 and level 2. So at level 1, they need to be able to find solutions to a straightforward problem. Whilst at level 2, it's a complex problem. And we would define a straightforward problem as one that requires one step or process or to work through more than one connected step or process. Whereas a complex problem is one which requires a multi-step process, typically requiring planning and working through at least 2 connected steps or processes. And similarly, the other differences here, at level 1, individual problems may have a combination of any 2 of the mathematical content areas, so that's number, shape, space and measure and handling data, and require learners to make connections between those content areas. Whereas at level 2, they may need to draw upon a combination of all 3 mathematical areas and require learners to make connections between those content areas. So we're going to take a look at effective planning, taking all of what we've just covered into account. Yes, we have to cover the subject content, but yes, we need to embed that problem solving and making connections. So when it comes to effective planning, we've got some principles for planning on this slide, which taken from a report that is linked, eliminating unnecessary workload around planning and teaching resources. So what the findings were from that report are that planning a sequence of lessons is more important than writing individual lesson plans. Fully resourced schemes of work should be in place for all teachers to use each term. Remember that planning is for the benefit of your learners and to ensure that you are fully prepared. It should never be done simply to please outside organisations, such as your awarding organisation or Ofsted. Planning should take place in purposeful and well-defined blocks of time, and effective planning makes use of high-quality resources. Now on this slide, I've got a lot of words on this slide. This particular table, we've got information from Ofsted's latest further education inspection toolkit. The inspections are going to be based on from November 2025. The criterion that is listed on this slide is taken from the middle band of the new 5-point scale for a secure curriculum. I'll give you the opportunity to pause the recording and read through for yourself what is expected in order for your curriculum to be thought of as secure. And an activity that we did in the live session was to look at the full toolkit and look at all 5 of the bands. And then to ask attendees to think about how they feel currently about their preparations in respect of these criteria. So do they feel that their curriculum planning is already secure, or perhaps it's actually exemplary, or is it in one of the lower bands? And also to think about what they may need to do in order to move up the bands. Some of the things that need to be done are not necessarily within an individual teacher's control, but that which is within your control, what can you do in order to use that toolkit as it is a toolkit. And even in the live session, we did have some attendees who aren't, they're not part of, they don't need to worry about Ofsted inspections because of the nature of their particular organisation. However, just using that toolkit as exactly that, as a toolkit, not as hoops to jump through, but something to aspire to, and some a way of gauging how well you yourself are doing on the particular aspects. So that's an activity that you can think of for yourself. You can go to the Further Inspection Toolkit, look at the bands within that curriculum area, and then think about how you're planning, where your planning would sit currently and what you might be able to do to move it up the bands. Now we'll take a look at schemes of work. It's likely that at this point you already have your long-term plans in your scheme of work. We're going to take the opportunity now to look at the NCFE schemes of work, since they have recently been redesigned, and you'll find them on our website. You'll find the new schemes of work in the Teaching Materials tab of the qualification pages. They are free to download, although you do require a portal login. If you don't have a portal login, you can still download our scheme of work by downloading the free sample of the new teacher delivery packs, and I'll show you how to do that in a later slide. So for this activity, and I'll show you the results of the activity, we asked the attendees in breakout rooms to choose one of the levels and take a look at that particular scheme of work and think about how they differ to our previous scheme of work, how they might use them with learners, any questions or what they notice. And I'll show you what a couple of the groups noted on their Padlet board. So one group noticed that the new scheme of work has more details to include activities compared to the previous scheme of work, which was just a sort of an order of teaching. There were no activities. They also noticed that the order of topics has changed, starting out with charts and graphs instead of number. So this is certainly the case. They were looking at, I think this group were looking at a level 1 or a level 2 scheme of work. In the entry levels, you will still find that the scheme of work is more linear. However, it's changed for level 1 and level 2, and the group did say that they did prefer the charts and graphs starting, since that is a topic that is quite interesting for learners. And they also noticed that there are self-study weeks they've been introduced where learners use workbooks. Another group noted that PowerPoints were indicated on the scheme of work. And so if you are a centre who has purchased our full teacher delivery packs, the PowerPoints that are referred to are the ones from the teacher delivery packs that are available to purchase direct from the website. But even if your centre is not using our teacher delivery packs and is using something else, then at least it does give teachers a sort of an indication of how they might create their own PowerPoints perhaps. They noted that the toolkits could change with the new ones. There's a lot of downloadable resources already. There are resources now listed on the scheme of work and a column with suggestions for activities. Learning activities is new. They said it was very useful to have the skill activity with different levels of learners. The assessment process is also new, and there was some skill stretch activities. Great that it's already there, makes it easier. So a lot of very positive comments on the schemes of work, which was music to my colleague Georgina's ears, and we'll hear from her now.
Yes, I will jump in there. There's some great feedback there actually, and I was really hoping that there was going to be plenty of you that were looking at the level 1, potentially level 2, but at least the level 1, because that's where this mastery approach is applied. To be honest, the entry levels, they are all new resources. They have been rewritten, but we haven't applied this mastery approach to those because they're entry level loads. But we've added loads of lovely visuals and things and more videos and things like that to the entry level stuff. So they're still absolutely packed with loads of great stuff, but they still follow a very linear way of delivering through the criteria. So the sort of, and I'm rattling through this because I'm keeping an eye on the time as well, because I know you guys are probably looking at the time. So mastery, that's how I say it, Charmaine. Teaching for mastery, where I am. I'm down in Nottinghamshire, so that's what we say down here. And I've just popped, I'm not going to read everything on this slide, but just to give you a bit of a flavour for what mastery is. So they are the core themes that you can see there. So the sort of overarching feeling around mastery, and I apologize for those of you who already know what this is, but this is for the benefit of sort of those who are not so familiar with it. It's more about sort of resilience and promoting this feeling that everybody can succeed with maths. You know, we have the ability to change our ability, if you like. So, you know, it's we don't want them to feel like I can't do it, won't do it. We don't want the can't do it, won't do it. We want the yes, I can, and to encourage this sort of growth mindset. So the engagement and resilience, that's about addressing all the negative attitudes and the fixed mindset that I've just talked about. The mastery part is about promoting this deeper understanding and the stuff that Charmaine was pointing out earlier, the sort of problem solving aspects and the reasoning and the way they can explain it, and can they talk about what they've done? Do they understand how it works? And then the responsive teaching is about, like some of you again, you've got the mixed groups going off there. So that's adapting to what the different learners in the groups are, to their prior knowledge and things like that. Can they build on that? Can they have discussions together about what they already know and then bring in the new stuff? So do you want to just put the next bit? Lovely, thank you. So very quickly, the key principles. So that you've just talked about how the order is different in the scheme of work. So we want to be able to create these connected, and I'm jumping down the bullets a little bit here, but just addressing that comment, is the connected learning pathways. So like you quite rightly said, number can be quite a dry subject, and nobody wants to come into a new year in a centre and have to do, you know, large numbers, just do a whole session on just working with large numbers. It's not the most exciting thing to jump into a new year with. So we've moved it all around to do something that's a little bit more relevant, a little bit more exciting, something that's really going to sort of get them interested in maths straight away. So hence we've used I'm just going to get it back up again in front of me, the handling data stuff. So graphs and charts, this is stuff they're seeing all the time. They're seeing it on news, they're seeing it on social media, they're seeing it on all different platforms. So why not start with something that they're seeing already and ask them what they know about it? Ask them how they understand it, ask them to have discussions about it. And that's the mathematical structure. So we're using lots of visuals again. And then we're building on what they already know. What have they already seen? How can they connect that to other things that they are doing, other things in maths that they know, whilst we're also building all this confidence? You know, we want them to feel confident. We want them to really understand it and be able to have these discussions, whilst cultivating this growth mindset at the bottom, a belief that everybody can actually do it. You know, the amount of times when I was teaching that I can't do it, I'm no good at maths. We've all heard it. I'm sure we've all heard it. I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. I won't do it. And that's what we want to change. And by changing this scheme of work up and making it more exciting, making it relevant, bringing lots of different maths concepts into one session so they can see how they all link. So you can eliminate that other question of, why do I need to know this? Why do I need to do this? How does I'm never going to use this. I'm never going to use this in life. Well, actually, let's make it all really fun, like contextual, functional, and show you how all the other concepts work. So hopefully a lot of you, maybe you're using bar models and area models. I think they're one of the best visual things we can use to help with the sort of more abstract concepts that learners sort of struggle with. We want to be looking at the relationships and, like I say, just really building on what learners already know. I am going to sort of say, when I've heard some of you talking about you've got mixed groups, it's going to be slightly difficult if you've got entry levels mixed with level 1 and level 2. I know Charmaine said earlier that does sound really quite challenging to me. And if I'm being honest, you might want to look at the stuff that Joe was showing us earlier, the skills builder stuff, because you can really use the learners can work a little bit more independently if you've got all those levels going off in the same group, so they can address their own, you know, you'll know your learners, you'll know what they need to do. That might be more appropriate. But these level 1 and level 2 are all mixed up. Like I said, we've moved everything around. We've tried to link the ideas as they work through this scheme of work. They'll hopefully be drawing on experience that they're building on top of their foundation knowledge that they already have. So hopefully it's going to improve confidence as they move along and really sort of set them up, not only to get their pass their exam at the end, that's that's great, but also set them up for life and work, which is what functional skills is all about. I feel like I'm waffling a little bit now, Charmaine. Is there anything else
No,
you'd
thank
like
you
me to
very
have I
much.
covered it?
And
Is there any
that
questions
is
very quickly?
it's a hugely important thing. They're doing their functional skills for their life and work. They're not doing it for their exam and then they're never going to do maths again. If that was the point of it, there would be no point.
But that's also part of the issue why students feel like they fail at maths, because they've been taught by rote and then they fail the exam because they've not been able to remember everything or they've not memorized everything. And then that leads to the low confidence. And that's why they come back with this I can't do it, won't do it attitude, which is not what we want to encourage.
And now we'll take a look at individual learning plans. The individual learning plan takes the broader objectives of the scheme of work and translates them into individual, achievable and measurable goals for each student. An effective ILP is at the heart of assessment, learning, support and achievement and can make the learner a more active and motivated participant on the learning journey. An ILP is a personalised, flexible route map to guide each learner's journey, should be a dynamic working document which the learner can take ownership of. And you can record learning goals and progression routes, initial and diagnostic assessment information, targets, progress and achievements, which will be a great help not just for the learner, but also if the maths is split between different teachers, as it can act as a communication aid. An ILP can also be a way of making and reinforcing links and connections between topics, subject and personal learning, and thinking skills. The ILP should include learning targets with outcomes, timescales and success criteria, details of the resources, support and guidance the learner will use, and details of where and how the learning will take place. And the information that I've given you on this slide, I've taken from this link on the slide, the Excellence Gateway. And here we have some benefits of using an individual learning plan. So for the learner, it allows them to take ownership of their own learning, allows them to recognise the value of their prior experiences, helps them to make sense of new experiences and understand how they learn. Gives them a plan to practice skills and gain confidence by applying them in a range of different contexts, such as the workplace, at home or in the community. Allows them to identify and understand barriers to learning and, where they can, find support to remove them. And it helps to measure their own success. And with staff can use individual learning plans to listen to learners' voices, review performance and respond to learners' needs, integrate processes around the learner, match teaching and learning to learners' strengths and needs, and ensure that learners are on the right programs and achieving according to expectations. ILPs also allow staff to plan opportunities for learners to extend their learning into contexts such as the workplace, community or leisure activities, and also give staff the opportunity to plan opportunities for progression to further learning. Now, you might create your own individual learning plan for your learners, but if you're using a platform like the NCFE Skills Builder, the individual skills plan will be created automatically from your learner's initial assessment and diagnostic. So as we can see here, and in the live session, we had Joe give us a demonstration, and so I will insert that recording here now.
Okay, hi everybody. So firstly, I just wanted to let you know that the functional skills assessment is made up of 3 assessments, if you like. So they do a screening, an initial assessment, and then a diagnostic. From the diagnostic, this then shows us any gaps in their learning, where you can see here, and then also where they're proficient at 100%. And then based on these gaps in the learning, the platform then provides them with an individual skills plan. This is called an ISP. So we can see here we've got all the topics down the left hand side, and within each topic they're made up of different sets of criteria. It could be 1 or 2 sets of criteria, it could be anything up to 8 or 9, 10 lots of criteria. So the criteria is made up of videos, information sheets, practice skills, and then a summative assessment. So the learners have to get 71% or more when they take the summative assessment to make this percentage bar move along. And then they'll go on to the next criteria and do the same, working through the resources. You can also add targets as well, so that you can set targets for your learner to complete a certain criteria or the full set of topics within a certain time period. If we go into here and have a look, I can open the topic and show you some of the resources. Also, just to let you know that the platform does mark all of the assessment and the majority of all the resources, in your case, all of them, because the only one it doesn't mark is the preparation assessment writing on the English. So this platform will mark all the assessment and all the resources for the maths. So as you can see here, it breaks it down into number, measure, shape and space, handling data, functional scenarios, and then you've also got some test papers there as well. You've got all your levels at the top here, so you can go into each level and look at different sets of resources, and also all the resources are printable as well. So it starts off with just the basic, because we are, if I go back and go up to, did you say most people are at entry level 3, level 1?
Say level 1 is probably
We'll go
more.
to level 1.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got a simple formula. So they start off with a information sheet, which they'll read through, and then they go on to the next page. And then it takes them into some practice questions. So it tells you at the top here that it's practice. Car hire company charges a deposit of £75 plus 25 per day. How much would it cost to hire a car for 3 days? So they can put their answer in there. And because it's a practice question, they also have am I right? So they can check to see if they're right or not. The show answer is only there because I'm logged in as a primary admin, so they wouldn't get that. If they don't know the answer, they've got a don't know button there. And once they've answered the question, they can move on to the next one, or they can press next up here. Again, it's just checking, am I right? Because I didn't check to see if I was right or not. It's actually moved on from that. And then it's going to take me to the summative. So here you'd then work through the summative. You've also got on some of the questions a calculator. So not all of them are, they can use calculator on. It will only pop up when they can use it. Again, they'll work through this. They've got a progress bar at the bottom here as well, so they can see that they're moving through the assessment or through the resources. And then they can review it as well and view the summary. Okay. Let's just go back. Let's have a look at something else. Estimating. We'll have a look at a video.
In this lesson, we'll be learning about estimating answers to calculations using fractions and decimals. Estimation is a process of finding approximate values or finding values that are very close to the exact answer. We can do
I
this
right,
when exact
Jo?
answers are not required. For
Yeah.
example, you want
Am
to
I
buy
right in
coffee for
thinking that
you.
the teachers can also like get an overview of how all of their learners are doing in one go, like from the teacher settings? Is that
Yep.
correct?
Yeah, they can do. So if they go to reports, they can go to group need overview. So you can also have a group set up for your tutor with their learners in there. So you might want to set groups up for the levels that your learners in, or you might just want to set groups up for your actual groups, like a morning group or an afternoon group. And then you've also got group need overview, which will give you, let me just go into the functional skills. Oh, there's nobody in that group. But yes, that's not very good, is it? But
Apologies.
yes, apologies there. But it will show you which learners are in that group and what percentage they're working at for each topic. So it will show the topic and then actually give you, as I say, that percentage and where they need to, what they need to work on, and who's in that group as well.
So it's quite nice from a start to so, you know, all the planning is done, it's there. You get that they do that initial assessment and diagnostic, so it tells you and them what they need to work on, and then they, as an individual, work through it until they're ready towards the end. And you, as a teacher, can see exactly what they're doing and how they're engaging. That's right, isn't it, Jo?
Yeah, definitely. So right from the assessments, you can see obviously what they've done, and then obviously the resources as well. Let me just go back into the learner. You can see the resources that the learner's working through as well.
Cool.
Sorry, it jumps out of the screen. So yeah.
Thank you very much. That's really helpful to see.
Me.
We're going to look at some strategies that support mastery. But first, we'll look at the 5 big ideas behind mastery, which Georgina has already touched upon. So this diagram is amended from the National Centre for Excellence in the Teaching of Mathematics website. And we start off with coherence. So that's one of the 5 big ideas. Teaching is designed to enable a coherent learning progression through the curriculum, providing access for all pupils to develop a deep and connected understanding of maths that they can apply and communicate in a range of contexts. Representation and structure. Ideally, in a mastery approach, teachers will carefully select representations of maths to expose mathematical structure. The intention is to support learners in seeing the maths rather than using a representation as a tool to do the maths. These representations become mental images that learners can use to think about and discuss maths, supporting them to achieve a deep understanding of mathematical structures and connections. Mathematical thinking is central to how learners learn maths and includes looking for patterns and relationships, making connections, conjecturing, reasoning, and generalizing. Learners should actively engage in mathematical thinking in all lessons, discussing and communicating their ideas using precise mathematical language. Fluency. Efficient, accurate recall of key number facts and procedures is essential for fluency. If your learners know things, by heart, it frees up their minds to think deeply about concepts and problems. But fluency demands more than this. It requires your learners to have the flexibility to move between different contexts and representations of maths, to recognize relationships and make connections, to explain their ideas and choose appropriate methods and strategies to solve problems. So we know that we like to set our learners, lots and lots of sort of similar questions so that they're practicing a particular skill because we want them to be fluent in that skill. However, if that is all we do, and we are not encouraging our learners to think flexibly sort of between concepts and make connections, then it's going to be quite difficult for them when it comes to applying those skills to a particular complex problem. And then finally, variation. The purpose of variation is to draw closer attention to a key feature of a mathematical concept or structure through varying some elements while keeping others constant. Through variation, the teacher focuses thinking and discussion on the key feature in question. And all of this leads, the 5 big ideas leads to a nice detailed curriculum that supports all learners to progress. Our teaching resources are available to purchase from the website. They're not mandatory, they are available, but your centre does not have to use them. If you were thinking of getting them though, you can access a sample from the Teaching Materials tab of the qualifications pages. So you would select the Find Out More, and then when you hit the Find Out More button, you are taken to a new web page, and from there you can click to download a resource sample. So that's helpful for you if you are choosing and thinking of buying them. It's also helpful to sort of, if you're thinking of creating your own resources and you want to look at, sort of ways that we've created our resources. And we also have a sample of the workbooks that you can access in exactly the same way. And it is also, when you click here to download the resource sample, that included in that resource sample is that free scheme of work. So it is possible to access the scheme of work without logging into the portal. Here we have an example from the sample resources. So we're looking at fractions, decimals and percentages. Learners are supported with the representation of the fraction, showing clearly how any of the possible answers would be correct. And moving on from this, the next slide and the next question on the next slide leads learners to connect percentages with decimals, giving them the opportunity to use chains of reasoning to work out. So when we're looking at the percentage of the shape that's shaded, we see that it's 50%. We've now got a chain of reasoning. So if 50% is 0.5 as a decimal, what do you think 10% would be as a decimal? And then from there, what 30% could be as a decimal. So before we've actually taught the procedure of converting a percentage to a decimal by dividing by 100, we're looking at patterns and making connections, which makes it much easier when your learners are completing the procedures that they may well want to learn. But if they ever forget what they need to do, well, they can sort of work it out logically. Here we've got example activities. So there's worksheets that accompany the PowerPoints, and for this particular session, the first activity that learners do is complete the table. I'm sure you've probably set something similar to this for your learners before. So to start with, learners, they complete the table, which supports them developing fluency, not just of the process of doing the conversions, but also seeing the common fractions, decimals and percentages that ideally learners should try to know without needing to do a calculation. And following on from the fluency activity, these are the next questions on the sheet. So we've got question 2. In one season, a football team won 45% of their matches, drew 27%. What percentage did they lose? What would that be as a fraction? Then true or false, 68% is the same as 6/8. Explain your answer. And what percentage of the shape is shaded? What would this be as a fraction? And in terms of those 5 big ideas of the mastery approach, we can see that question 2, we are using mathematical thinking because we need to deduce the amount that they lost. Then we're making connections again with fractions. Question 3, we've got a true or false, which is a kind of a variation activity, and we are explaining our answer. So that, again, it's encouraging us to use mathematical thinking. And then for the final question, we're using representation and structure to support our learners. You can bring the mastery approach into your own setting by considering how you might take closed questions that absolutely do have a place for developing fluency and then amending them. so that you're asking more open questions instead. For example, this closed question, 72 divided by 9, which we now know is an entry level 2 requirement, since it's a double digit number divided by a single digit number. We can take this and then ask more open questions. So we give a little context and then we ask more open questions. So this is the situation. There's 72 daffodil bulbs to share equally between 9 plant pots. What might be a good estimation for the number of bulbs per pot? What makes it a reasonable estimation? How could you represent it visually? How could you check to see how far off your estimation was from the actual number of bulbs? And then can you think of a different question using the same numbers and the same context? So again, we're trying to get our learners to think more than just completing these closed questions. Other ways, and again, we've already mentioned one of the mastery approaches is using representations, using objects. So here we've got some questions. A nice, tasty objects always go down well in the session, and can be a great way for learners to connect the maths to the real world and develop a deeper understanding. So the questions on this slide all relate to fractions and dividing, but you could just as easily focus on area and perimeter using the same bar, perhaps in the same session, and making connections between. Venn diagrams can be a great starter activity and are highly participatory by their nature. An example is shown here. So in the purple, we need to have a number that's larger than 0.25. In the green, it must be smaller than 50%. In the black, the denominator must be 8. And what we need to do is think of a fraction that will go in each area. And if you think a region is impossible to fill, convince me why. And a good way to start this activity off is to give learners some examples first to fit into the diagram. So for example, a third, where's that going to go? Well, it's smaller than 50%, but it is larger than 0.25, so it goes here. Then we have 3/4, which is the denominator is not 8, so it can't go there. It's bigger than 50%, so it can only go in the purple box. And a 1/10, the only one that can fit into is the one that's smaller than 50%. And an activity like this, and after you've put these particular ones in, then everybody can write different fractions and choose where to put them into the space. It's highly participatory for learners. There's almost limitless numbers of fractions that can be placed into the Venn diagram. And it also means that learners experience early success, which is motivational. There's plenty of opportunities to practice the key procedure, and the practice feels different. So we're using variation, which is one of those 5 key mastery approaches. The practice feels different to the usual just, order these fractions activities that we quite often do. And there's also opportunities to make connections, solve problems, and think more deeply. But the focus is on the practice, which is ordering fractions with a consideration for how they relate to decimals and percentages. And the final activity that we were going to do in the group was to have a look at some underpinning skills questions and then use those as a launch pad really to kind of come up with different activities or different questions that perhaps used some of the other mastery approaches. So again, that's something that perhaps you'd like to do in your own time. You can take, have a little think about how you can develop some underpinning skills questions that you have or that you use, and how you can perhaps adapt those questions to help your learners to think more deeply about the concepts that they're covering. In summary, and this is the key takeaway that our attendees wrote on Slido, so they have a better awareness of the resources, the schemes of work. That it's highlighted because a lot of people would have put that that was the most useful takeaway from the session. Key principles, I'm guessing, of planning, making connections, clarity. Perhaps that's skills forward or skills builder, linking concepts, availability of resources, looking at the Ofsted inspection toolkit as a way to sort of gauge the effectiveness of your own schemes of work or your own planning. So that's what our attendees thought. You can think about for yourself, what's your key takeaway from this session? And in summary, use the qualification specification as a starting point. So do always refer back to the qualification specification. Create, use or adapt a comprehensive scheme of work. Consider how you can adapt your own scheme of work to the needs of the individuals that you teach. Consider how you can integrate mastery methods into your delivery to prepare your learners for using maths confidently in their life and work. And any questions? If you have any questions about what we've covered in this session, then please do get in touch. And you can, this is a feedback form for everybody who is watching this recording. We had a different feedback form for the live events, but within that feedback form, I believe there's an opportunity to sort of ask any additional questions. So you can ask it from the feedback form, or shortly, I'll give you my email address, and you can always drop me an email or come along to one of our maths drop-ins. Be very nice to see you, or any of the generic maths, English and digital drop-in sessions. You can find all of our training and events from the delivery support page by clicking on the top right image. There we go, functional skills events. And then you'll see everything there. We've got our Teach, Share, Transform Best Practice Network, our functional foundation sessions, which we've got some coming up, which are the first lot we've got are very much geared up towards new teachers, but we'll have some more in-depth workshops that you can attend later on in the year. We've also got some on-demand events on our events page, and then we have the list of our upcoming live events. These are the ones we've got upcoming in October 2025. But obviously, if you're watching this recording at a later date, then you can just go straight to the webpage and see what's coming up. Thank you so much for your time in listening and viewing this recording. I hope you found it useful and helpful. You've got key contacts on this final page. You've got myself and Patricia for English, Maths and Digital. You've got your account manager if you'd like to look at additional products, different pricing, resourcing queries. Customer support who you should turn to for anything related to the portal or Surpass. And if you like information on our skills assessment platform or skills builder, you can contact the team using the email or the telephone number here. So again, if you've got any questions, please get in touch. But otherwise, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, whatever it is you might be getting up to. Thanks.